All right, guys, we're live for the Gashouse Gang on a Friday. Just the two of us, Bernie Miklasz, Kevin Wheeler. Look at this.
This might be the first time. I know this ain't a radio show where it's just the two of us. It's not a radio show. It's the Gashouse Gang, which you can find on YouTube. You can find it everywhere. But you and I have joked about this, kind of. You know, we've been teammates at a couple different places, but we never really did a show together where it's just the two of us jabbering. So for our listeners and watchers, I don't know that that's a good thing to have two yap guys talking at them for the next 45 minutes or whatever. Because you and I can say this about us. We are never short of words, man. Never short of words.
No, definitely not. And we got a lot to cover. We'll hit some college football later on, which will be fun. Take a look at the weekend, which, you know, and again, just as a quick tease, not going to get into it now, but basically sets up as yet another playoff weekend. It's basically how we go. So we'll get into that in a little bit. We got a bunch of Cardinal stuff to start with. And Bern, you know, let's talk about Nolan Arenado and potential destinations. Because you did a great video on the Bernie Show on YouTube about the idea of moving him and why you need to. You and Matt talked about that yesterday, too, just how it all fits together with Wilson moving to first base. And, you know, we know that there are going to be limitations on what you can do because Nolan has control of the wheel. He gets to decide yes or no on any potential destination. So we all keep talking about, and I see speculation nationally a bit, about the Dodgers because, you know, he's from LA or he's from California. The Dodgers always want great players. But when you look at it, I'm not sure they have a fit. You know, you've got Max Muncy under contract for pretty good money. You don't have a DH role available with Shohei. You don't have first base available with Freddie Freeman. And, you know, it would require like moving Muncy and doing some other things. So I guess the way I wanted to approach this was, what if LA is not an option? What makes sense to you as far as destinations go? And I've got a couple in my mind, but I'm not sure that there's a perfect one out there from the player's perspective.
Well, listen, here's and this applies to the Dodgers, and I'm glad you mentioned them first because I think there's this really widespread, almost natural assumption. Oh, the Dodgers. And listen, we have to remember who runs the Dodgers. It's Andrew Friedman, who may be the most talented, most intelligent baseball executive, or at least a guy leading a front office that there is in the industry. Does he make mistakes? Yeah, they all do. But Andrew Friedman is amazing. You're not going to get anything by. You're not going to sneak anything by Andrew Friedman. Like Andrew Friedman, in fact, Andrew Friedman has got access to the most advanced and comprehensive analytics department and information department in Major League Baseball. They have like 5 armies of people on this stuff. So whatever flaws there are with Nolan Arenado and as it pertains to the aging curve, the Dodgers are going to be all over that. They're not going to say, well, he's Nolan Arenado. Oh, it'll be okay. That's not how they roll. There are some obvious warning signs with Nolan Arenado and his profile, and he'll be 34 years old next year. And if you pick up the contract or part of the contract in the final year of the contract, he'll be 36. I don't see him getting any better. So that I don't think anybody is going to trick the Dodgers. So that's part B. So I don't assume the Dodgers at all, unless the Cardinals just want to give him away and pick up half the money owed to him. Maybe they would entertain it. But you make a good point. It's not like they want to dump Max Muncy. But anyway,
and they could, but it's not. I mean, it's an added layer, right? You've got to move multiple layers to make that deal make sense.
And I think that's the timing of this, because I'm sure in the summer of 2023 or whatever, when the Dodgers were floating the idea of they're starting a media circus of rumors. Remember that at the deadline, floating the idea that Arenado could waive his no trade to go to the Dodgers. They were trying to drum up some business, but a lot has changed since then. Anyway, I'm going to turn it back over to you because you mentioned. Okay, let's talk about what teams we think might be interested. So you start us off on that, my friend.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, I mean, first of all, there are going to be certain sets of criteria, right? I mean, sure, we count the Dodgers, by the way. I count them. I'm just saying it's not as simple as, call the Dodgers. You know, they have to move multiple pieces to make it happen. And they're smart and creative. Maybe they do. And maybe they see something that they can fix in Nolan offensively, like they did with Albert when he came there from Anaheim. So you just don't know. So I'm not writing that off. I'm just saying it's not as automatic, right?
I agree. That's a good way to put it.
So then as we expand it, clearly we start with it's got to be a contender, right? He's not going to waive his no trade clause to go anywhere else. And no non-contender wants an older player that makes a good bit of money. So when we look at the options that make sense, not much in the National League Central. First of all, you probably wouldn't want to do that anyway. But secondly, nobody there is really throwing money around. You look at the National League West outside of the Dodgers. There's reports today the Giants are cutting back on payroll. Plus, they just signed Matt Chapman. So there's no fit there. The Padres have Manny Machado, and I don't think they're moving him to shortstop to make that kind of move. No. Diamondbacks aren't going for that kind of money. We know the Rockies are out. In the National League East, I guess Philly maybe.
Yeah,
they'd have to move Alec Bohm.
Yeah, that kind of fits their style. You know, Dave Dombrowski, he's a swashbuckler. Like, he'll defy conventional wisdom. He pays attention to analytics, but he isn't owned by analytics. If he wants a big name and he thinks the guy would thrive in that setting, he'll go for it. So yeah, I would think that they would, at least in theory, be a candidate.
Yeah, they make sense. I mean, they're willing to spend. They could upgrade defensively, but again, they have to move Alec Bohm somehow, some way, right? You have to move him around because Schwarber's the DH, Harper's the first baseman. You're not really going to do anything. But I think there'd be a trade market for Alec Bohm. He's not a great defender, but somebody else might see him as a part-time third, part-time first DH type. But he fits them in the sense that they're going to spend. They do want to make themselves better defensively, and Nolan would definitely do that. And if he's there, he's probably hitting what, 5th or 6th? It's not like you need him to carry. Plus, that ballpark probably works for him. That's a good hitter's ballpark.
I looked at StatCast, and if I remember this correctly, I looked at it yesterday morning. If he had played all his home games in Philadelphia, Arenado would have hit about 5 or 6 more home runs last year. Now, that's not it still doesn't mean it's a monster total, but you're looking at a 21, 22 home run guy.
Yeah, for sure. And, as I go through, so that's one team that makes sense on a fit level, and they can handle the money and all of that. If you want to look at the Mets, they could probably do it. They might have to move some things around. But again, Steve Cohen has money, and they want to get better, and they want to contend. So there's a potential fit there. Although I wouldn't necessarily rate it as high because they're in the Soto sweepstakes. So I don't think they want to necessarily do
also that kid did a great job for them last year.
He did. Yeah, Vientos. And there's some buzz that they want to move Vientos to first if Pete Alonso leaves. But see how there's so many layers, right? This would have to be a thing that would develop later in the offseason as far as Mets interest. We're like, okay, Pete leaves, and maybe now we want to switch around and we'll go for a little more defense. But it's, again, right now, it's probably not a priority. So, you can forget the Marlins. The Nationals are going to play their young kid, Brady House, at third base. They're in the market for a first baseman, but Nolan's not moving over there. So really,
Braves got their guy.
Yeah, we don't have to worry about the Braves. They've got their guy at third base. So Phillies and maybe the Mets in the National League would make some sense. The Yankees make sense, Bernie, to a degree. They're always trying to get better. They need to be better defensively. Look, they've been terrible defensively, as we saw in the World Series. But it's also going to be dependent, like I said, it's kind of like the Mets, because they're in on Soto. They might be on Alonso. They're going to be in on a lot of things, and it might be one of those end of the offseason, crap, we didn't get everything we wanted. But again, slotting Arenado in, 6th spot in the lineup behind the big boppers to get some defense is not the craziest thing, and we know they have money, but I don't know that I would put that as a big priority. Baltimore's not going there. They're not going to spend that money, plus they don't really need that type of player. Boston could be interesting. They
got a hell of a third baseman, though.
Yeah, there's been some buzz they might move him. That they may want to move him to DH or first base. Okay. They don't love Rafael Devers' defense. If they move him to first, it would mean they have to move the young slugger Tristan Casas. But again, that's multiple levels. But contender could use the defensive upgrade at a really important position, and he probably, thinking ballpark, Bernie. He's built for that short left field porch, Nolan is, because all those balls that are flyouts to the left center field warning track at Busch Stadium are doubles and home runs at Fenway.
Certainly would jack up his totals there, yeah.
Yeah, and then, you go through, Tampa's not doing that. Toronto might be a sleeper. I don't know if it doesn't sound like it appeals to Nolan.
Probably not.
Yeah, it probably doesn't appeal to him, but they might have a need for that. The one, and the Central teams, It's not happening with Cleveland. It's not happening with the Royals. The Twins are not adding payroll. The White Sox are terrible. Detroit might have interest. They do need some help at third, but they need more bat than what he'd get, and their ballpark is a lot like Busch Stadium, so I'm not sure it's going to translate. But you know where it translates, and it's not the Angels, it's not the A's, not the Rangers, because they have a third baseman. Seattle is looking for offense and upgrades in the infield, and they have a lot to offer. But you know the team that makes a lot of sense is Houston if they lose Bregman.
I agree. And Altuve and some of the other veterans have been part of those championship clubs. They're all getting older, and there is a desperation for like one more ring, one more time. Let's do it again. Sort of like the Golden State Warriors, the year they beat the Celtics in the NBA championship. That old gang had like one left in them, and they were determined to get it. And it's kind of like the Astros are kind of like that version, and they will need a third baseman. And their owner has shown that he will be very, very aggressive. He will even override his own general manager and kind of make a move on his own. And it would be an ideal ballpark for Arenado.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he would be in the middle of a lot of big games for a team that is really, really going hard to win. But again, we don't know. You and I agree on the Astros are a really intriguing candidate.
Yeah.
But we don't know what the Astros – look, I'll be honest with you. I don't expect – if the Cardinals want to offload Arenado and a large portion of that contract, they're just not going to get much in return. They're just not.
Right.
Like, this is about a salary dump base, and also sort of getting him out of the clubhouse
and creating opportunities for right.
But it really does come down to Houston and like what Jim Crane's demands would be in terms of how much money the Cardinals have to eat. Do they have to eat half of it? Do they have to eat 25% of it? See, that's something we can't answer sitting here today.
Nope.
But do they profile as a candidate? Yeah, they sure do. If something's going to happen, they would be on the short list of candidates. There's no doubt about that.
That's Bernie Miklasz and Kevin Wheeler with you here on the Gashouse Gang. Obviously, live everywhere you want to find it on the socials. Live on KMOX at night tonight at 8 o'clock. Bern, we've got there's another Cardinals thing I wanted to bring up with you because you mentioned how critical the bullpen was to last year's team on our show on Monday when it was all four of us and we did our Cardinals roundtable with the four of us, you and me and Tom and Matt. And I wanted to dig into that a little bit more too, on the bullpen side. The scenarios like with and without Helsley, right? If you end up keeping Helsley and waiting for the deadline and seeing how things go, I think we have an idea of how that bullpen looks, right? That bullpen has got him at the top end of it, and then you slot in Romero and Fernandez and Liberatore and maybe a couple other pieces as you go further down the list.
It does fall into place rather nicely. You don't have pitchers, but Fernandez is ready to graduate to that role.
Yeah, I would agree. And you can develop and or find new guys. You can go out and get another relatively cheap right-handed reliever who can slot in and be like a sixth inning guy. Right.
And they got some younger guys in the system that are throwing awfully hard.
Yeah.
Who maybe long-term profile as starters, but you don't have to use them as a starter. That was one of Tony La Russa and Dave Duncan's big philosophies.
That's how Waino started. Come on, we all know it, right?
Exactly. Put him in the bullpen. When Matt Morris came back from Tommy John surgery, he was already a really good major league starter. But La Russa and Duncan said, no, it's best to build him up. We're gonna put him in the bullpen for his year after the Tommy John. They've always believed that it's really smart to use starters like that who have either been affected by a surgery and coming back from that. Or they're too young to be trusted maybe to start, or there's no room in the rotation for them.
Which those could be true for the Cards.
Those guys were always really aggressive about putting, quote, starting pitchers in the bullpen. And, there's a friend of mine who knows their minor league system really well. And I'm not going to rattle off the names because I would leave out half of them. But he said, there's any number of guys that in very short time could jump into that bullpen and get you a lot of strikeouts because they got pretty nasty stuff. Now, some of them may not always control it very well, but they got really nasty stuff. So I do think they'll have some internal options as well. But the kind of year that Helsley had, I mean, he was, well, pardon the cliche, but he was the last line of defense, and everything was set up to get the final three outs to him. And Ali Marmol was really smart in how he handled that. And the Cardinals, with me, win probability added is a really important measure of a bullpen. I've always used that as a go-to. and they were like top 5, top 6 in the majors, and they were top 5, top 6 in a lot of categories.
Yeah.
And they lost 2 games, I think, 1 or 2 games all season when they led, after 7 innings, or after 8 innings, I should say. And they only lost 3 or 4 at the most when they had a lead after 7 innings or so they were one of the very best teams in the majors at just, if you give them a late lead, they bring it home. Yeah, you're going to lose a couple of those along the way, but they're going to bring it home. But that's because you could count on Helsley, who was absolutely money. He was about as sure thing as you could get in the majors last year to close out games. And even if he didn't close out games, he got some wins by Marmol using him in extra innings too.
Yeah.
Being aggressive with him in extra innings, not holding him for something like for a save opportunity. Just go out there and shut that team down in the 10th inning. And then we live to fight another day. So the percentage of wins that had Ryan Helsley's involvement is staggering for a closer when you add up the saves and you add up his individual win totals. You take that enforcer out of there. That's the enforcer. He's the guy that cracks the heads and gets you into the winner's circle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Boy, the whole thing can change, and it can change pretty dramatically. Yeah. You and I, through all of our many years of devotion to watching baseball, know that a really good team have basically been ruined or wrecked in a major way, but they don't have someone to put games away in the 9th inning. As Tony La Russa told me so many times, he said the most devastating thing in baseball is when you really are confident, you have a game won, and then all of a sudden it's gone. He said it's that thing saps your morale more than anything in terms of the competition itself. So I don't think we can underestimate that. I really don't think we can underestimate that. Now, is there a chance that I hope not, but is there a chance that if they keep him, could he hurt his shoulder? Could he blow out an elbow? Yeah. I mean, they're all volatile. And I think he's particularly volatile because he has a history of injuries. Anyway, do you think they're going to reevaluate whether to keep him or not? Maybe with the idea of, I think Derek Gould implied this in something that he wrote, our mutual friend. They're not going to give Helsley away. If they get overwhelmed by an offer, they'll trade him. But it would have to be overwhelming. And the other thing is, if he stays healthy, you can flip him at the trade deadline next summer. So they don't necessarily have to trade him this winter. And there's going to be a lot of closers available. Devin Williams is available. There's a lot of talk about the Astros putting Ryan Presley out there. If you look at the Athletics list today, where they talk about, okay, these are the best positions in free agency, not necessarily like the top 1 or 2 players, the best positions in terms of depth. And they listed a lot of high leverage relievers in free agency. So the market is actually pretty flooded with free agent types. And then Devin Williams and Presley probably going on the market. Maybe the Cardinals wouldn't get as much for Helsley as we anticipate. Yep. When you look at this pragmatically about how much high leverage pitching will be available to teams. It's not like there's a real shortage of those guys. I'm not going to call it a surplus, but there's a really nice supply of those guys. Yep. So teams won't be as desperate to give the Cardinals, hey, whatever you want. They're going to face some competition trying to move him and might be disappointed in what's being offered. We have to wait and see.
Yeah, I think to me, that's the perfect position to be in, though. You don't have to move him, so you're going to move him if the deal comes through. Maybe a contender, maybe a top team looks at Carlos Estevez and Tanner Scott and says, yeah, those guys are great, but man, that's a 3 to 5 year commitment. And, both of them have been great recently, but they have their flaws. Scott doesn't throw a lot of strikes. Estevez hasn't always been a good closer, although he was last year. He was one of the best ones in baseball last year. And maybe they feel like a 1 year on a guy like Devin Williams or Ryan Helsley is a better deal for them. But again, I think it's just one of those things you got to play out. You don't need to do it. You don't rush into it. You don't force it. Because, Mo said this at the GM meetings. They're not trying to tank. They still want to be competitive. Well, that allows that as a possibility. And I think in addition to that, and closing out the bullpen conversation for today, Bern, I think it's time to maybe be more aggressive along the lines of what you said. and stop holding guys back. You don't need 4 potential reserve starters at Memphis. You don't need 5. You need 2 or 3 that are going to be your reserve guys for the most part. And by the way, if you take a guy like Zach Thompson or you take a guy like Gordon Graceffo and move them to the pen, you can move them back. They just did it with Palante. We literally just watched that happen. So there are ways to work that. I think it's time to commit to Thompson as a reliever. He's never going to throw enough strikes to be a starter. And he throws hard and he strikes people out. I mean, like let's make a call. Let's make a call. Stop playing around. Make a call. He's always been, since college, he has walked too many guys to be a starter. Let's just make the call.
I'm not laughing at you, man. I'm just laughing at, it's like, there's a tendency to forget that listen to me. Well, Brad Thompson exists. So he does.
Hi, BT.
But there is you almost, I can speak for myself. There was a time when I was writing something and I'm talking about possibilities for this or that. And I just left Zach Thompson off the list, not because I intentionally omitted him. He's just out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about him in a very long time, but he's still there. And I'm laughing because, oh, wait a minute. He's still there, right? Wow. Okay. What's he about? Is he about 39 years old now? Or but listen, this back and forth, starter reliever. I'm 100% with you. They have got to commit to this guy, once and for all. You've had several years now that you decide who he is and then let him go. And I think you're probably right about that as far as him being a reliever. And apparently they've had him working on a lot of things with maybe to reshape his body to have more of a relievers type stamina reservoir. I mean, I don't know. But he's certainly a candidate. You can't just
got stuff, man.
Yeah, you can't just say no way.
No, he's a similar guy to Jojo Romero. Jojo had the same problems as a starter. Couldn't throw enough strikes, but man, you put him in the pen, his stuff plays up, and he goes 1 inning at a time, and he's phenomenal.
Yeah, and I think Ollie Marmol last year did a heck of a job running that bullpen.
Yep.
And if he has enough of the pieces, I have no reason to think that he wouldn't do a good job knowing how to utilize a guy like Thompson and some other setup guys, because they had the roles very well defined last year, which is maybe the most important thing other than the talent of your relievers. The most important thing a manager can do to enhance what he has is to have all the roles aligned and everybody knows what's expected, and you just go down the line in order pretty much, and it sort of clicks and takes care of itself. Yep. The managers are always screwing up with things. They introduce chaos into their own bullpen, and that's the last thing you need is chaos in your bullpen. And I thought the Cardinals did a really good job of really reducing that possibility last season. They're really going to have to do it in 2025. The bullpen will be more important than ever.
This is the Gashouse Gang, Bernie Miklasz and Kevin Wheeler with you today. Mondays, by the way, we're calling them Cardinals Mondays. So it'll be an entire show about the Cardinals with Bernie and me and Tom and Matt. So that'll be every Monday. And then Tuesday through Friday, we'll be mix and match, kind of like we've been this week. It'll be different, a little different day by day, depending on how things go. Let's change gears, Bernie. Let's go college football. And there's so many big games this weekend. And I do want to get a quick thought on Mizzou in a little bit, but I want to go bigger picture to start with here, because, you've got essentially what are playoff games this week. I mean, we've already started this. This has been going on now for a couple of weeks, but right now you got things like Alabama LSU is basically an elimination game.
No doubt.
Georgia Ole Miss is an elimination game for Ole Miss. Indiana playing host to Michigan. I don't think it's an elimination game for them, but it's definitely a prove it game. Mizzou is probably not a playoff team if they win out, but if they lose this weekend, they're definitely not. And I wanted to bring this to you because you and I, we've both been talking college football for a long time. And I know you remember the conversations that the powers that be in college football always pushed forth, which was, a playoff would ruin the regular season. It would diminish the value of the regular season games. And I think I always believed, and I think now I'm being proven correct, that expanding the playoffs is expanding the value of regular season games. We have more games that matter now than ever before. And then on top of that, here's my dramatic statement of what I want you to react to, Bern. I think going to the 12-team college football playoff is going to save college football from its own self, because this was drifting into a place where only one region of the country mattered. For the last 15 years, the Southeast is all that mattered. It was all of the teams that were winning championships. Yeah, a little bit here and there with Ohio State or whatever, but it was becoming the SEC running the whole show with the Big Ten kind of in there a little bit, little shot of Clemson. But look at it now. Everybody's involved. Every part of the country, 15 to 18 teams still have a realistic chance. I think this actually keeps college football from shooting itself in the foot.
And you have programs that, to use your word, legitimate. Now, we wouldn't say that the teams I'm about to discuss, we wouldn't say that they would be favorite to win a championship or to even get to the semifinals, but they're in it, or they're going to be in it. Like a team like BYU has got a chance to do something. We would not in the old system. They would have been out. They wouldn't have even entered our mind.
No chance for the top four.
I don't know that the ACC will get a second team in there, but I think SMU is really one of the great stories of the college football season.
Yeah,
and I could see them, being kind of a sleeper team that sneaks in there. I don't know, but up until last week when Iowa State lost, that was a team that again would have had no chance. But they made a run for it. And I know I'm leaving out a bunch of teams. I mean, there are so many teams that got a fighter's chance at this. Well, heck, the Army, West Point's got a chance. My Navy team has kind of subsided, and that's okay. I'm an Army fan unless they're playing Navy. So Army's a legitimately good team. I think they get an excellent chance to be in the playoff. Now, how cool is that as one example?
Yeah.
Under the old system, are you kidding me? They're nowhere near the party. They're not even invited to the watch party to see where they're going to pick the teams. They're totally irrelevant. And who else do we have? I mean, because I'm leaving some teams out.
Oh, I mean,
Indiana's a great story.
We could still make a case for Colorado if they win out.
Absolutely.
We can talk about Pittsburgh if they were to win out and find their way into it. Kansas State. As a potential Big 12 winner. I mean, and not even it is that. I think you nailed it, Bernie. Just opening it up to where those teams have a chance. I also think it's even teams that have been in big conferences, like the Pac-12 got left out how many years in a row? You just wiped out the whole West Coast of college football fandom. They know we're not, unless we're perfect, we're not getting in, because there's going to be 2 SEC teams. There's going to be a Big 10 team, and then the fourth team might be a Texas or an Oklahoma. It might be Clemson, but like the whole West Coast just got washed out for a long time. So it's the extra teams too from these other conferences, right? Like extra, like Penn State. Penn State's one of the powers on the East Coast. And unless they were going to win the Big Ten, they weren't going to get in otherwise.
That's right.
Now they could be in there, and that brings in a region. I think that's kind of my point. Like bringing the whole country into this playoff conversation is going to be a great thing for a long time.
They're good Boise State. And, they have one of the most electric, impressive players in the country in their running back, who's probably going to be invited to New York. I don't know if he'll win it. But look at Boise State. Look at how great they are. And their only loss of the season was they went to Oregon, and the Ducks just barely escaped losing that game. So if there's such a thing that is a resume building loss, an impressive loss, a loss where you look at the team and say they really proved something that day, going into Oregon and just about upsetting the Ducks, that's about as good a quote loss as you can have. Boise State has been irrelevant in these discussions for a long time.
Yeah.
And I also think, with that, and I'm telling you what you already know, but for people listening to us, the thing that's beautiful about the new system, not just the playoff system, but the NIL and the transfer portal, there's some things about it that we don't like, right? But look at how quickly Cignetti was able to get Indiana from the bottom of the steps. They're in the basement. You can't even find them. You got to call out their name. Are you down there? And all of a sudden, all of a sudden they're like this legitimately outstanding team. Now they still have some things to prove, But Cignetti was able to, the great equalizer was the transfer portal. And think about all these other teams just taking advantage of the transfer portal to not match the talent of a Texas or a Georgia or whoever we want to mention. But there's still more parity because of it, because a lot of aggressive coaches and boosters and people that have started these, whatever they're calling those things, up slush funds.
Yeah.
Slush funds.
Yeah, that's
No,
right.
no, the playing field is not exactly level, but it's a lot more even than it used to be. And see, that fits into the 12 playoff team because
That's right.
There are now more good teams than I can ever remember since I've started becoming a really big and closely following college football. There are good teams all over the place, to your point, in every geographic region. Not just teams that are beating up on awful competition. I mean, really good football teams. And the transfer portal and the NIL is also been a huge factor in that. And so remember the thinking on that, or the criticism of that.
Yeah.
Which is like, well, listen, Alabama's going to buy up all the players. Georgia's going to buy up all the players. Ohio State's going to buy up all the players. Texas is buying up all the players. All these medium-sized teams, these smaller programs, they'll have no chance. They might as well just disappear from the face of the earth. The exact opposite has happened.
Yep.
Do the big boys, do the reigning superpowers, do they buy up a lot of players? Well,
Yep.
Of course they do. They have a lot more to offer, not just money in terms of their recruiting pitch. They're still going to lead. Those teams are still going to be in the top 5, top 7 in recruiting every single year. But now, because of the NIL, the smart coaches who can identify talent realize that, hey, Georgia was on this kid. I'm giving a hypothetical. They were on this kid, and then they grabbed someone else instead. We got a chance to go get this kid now, and because we have the money that can entice him.
Yeah.
So really, all the stuff that we really hated or worried about with this system, including the 12-team expansion, it's actually been really, really good for the sport. And I know some people will totally disagree with that, only because they're traditionalists, and I do respect that. But if we're talking about whether this has actually been good for the product and increasing parity in the sport and giving more teams an opportunity, it's indisputable that these combination of factors has been good for college football.
No, you're totally right. And then you throw on top of this, Texas and Alabama and those type schools, they have extra resources when it comes to dollars. But everybody has 11 starting spots on each side of the ball.
That's right.
So if you can get the same amount of money or close to go be a starter at Indiana or be number 2 on the depth chart at Alabama and know that they're probably recruiting a 5-star player at your position for next year, which one are you going to choose? Now, you may still choose Bama, but at least it's opening up another layer of discussion to make your decision about something other than I just want to go to the place where, I know there's tradition and they're going to put me in the NFL. But if you can go play and get paid and improve your NFL stock, and by the way, you can always transfer back there in 2 years when they promise you a starting spot. Yeah, I think.
We'll see it. Like that Alabama offensive tackle did that. The freshman.
Yeah,
he left. He went to Iowa, where he's from, and then he was there for like 2 months, and then he left. He went back to Alabama. He didn't even play a game at Iowa. No, it's a revolving door. You can do whatever the heck you want. Bye.
No doubt.
Anyway, it's kind of, and the other thing too is if having NIL money guarantees success, where you're saying like, well, it's just about the money. I'm not so sure about that. Where there's a lot of money, where there's a fired up alum base that'll just give a team anything they want, everything they want. I'll name 2 of them, and they're both in the SEC: Auburn and Florida. There's no shortage of money at Auburn. Those people they'll pay whatever they have to pay. Same thing in Florida. They're so desperate. So it isn't just about money. You still have to have a hell of a coach. You still have to have really good assistants. You have to have excellent facilities. It's the whole ball. But no, this idea that you can just go buy a team and you're on your way. No. Let's slow down on that one. There's some additional components that will always be important, including how well you're coached.
All right, Bernie Miklasz, Kevin Wheeler with you here. It's the Gashouse Gang. Bernie, just a few minutes left.
Yes,
let's get into Mizzou for a second. The Illini have the week off. Mizzou's got Oklahoma. I view this as I don't know, this may be a bit dramatic, but kind of a test of your manhood. You need to beat Oklahoma. I mean, I know we all know what Mizzou's situation has been at times. We all know what's gone on at quarterback, but you're in the SEC. You're planning on being one of the contenders there year in and year out. Oklahoma's down. Their offense isn't very good. To me, at home this week, you have to beat Oklahoma.
There's no doubt about it, because, I mean, you know, Oklahoma has been on a low ebb season. They've had instability at quarterback. They can't decide what to do. The defense is still pretty good, but not as good as people thought. They have a good running game, but again, you look, their receivers are all beat up. I mean, really beat up. They might get a guy or two back this week, but there are no dynamic playmakers on the offense. The running back's pretty good, but I'm talking about game-breaking talent. There's really not that guy. What's the freshman quarterback's name? I'm always so bad at that. Arnold.
Arnold. Yep.
Who they recruited, great fanfare. He has not done it so far. He's back in the saddle again, and he'll play it at Mizzou. But Oklahoma is certainly one of the most disappointing teams in the country, much more disappointing than Mizzou, but Mizzou nonetheless is disappointing. I mean, because they haven't played to the level we thought they would play.
Right.
They don't get a pass rush on a defense at all. I was looking at some metrics. I go to Sports Info Solutions, have an account, and I was looking at some Mizzou defensive metrics. Some areas where they should be good, they're not good. They should have an excellent pass rush. They don't. Why? Is it the new coordinator? Are there guys out of place? Is it the scheme? I don't know. But even the stuff where they should be good, they're not good. Because you can look at the wide receivers, and they've been hurt by injuries there. But we know your wide receivers are only going to be, for the most part, only going to be as good as your quarterback. And of course, Mizzou has had a terrible year at the quarterback position. Even before Brady Cook got hurt, his numbers were, in terms of accuracy, nowhere close to what they were last year. And so it's like they have so many things that they're trying to deal with to get this puzzle put back together again. And it just doesn't look very good. This is a team that they can beat, but it just shows you how Mizzou has slipped in terms of the perception. And we're talking about the gambling public.
Yeah.
Because they're probably going to have to go with Drew Pine tomorrow. And Mizzou went from being like a 3.4-point favorite. They're a 3-point underdog at home Saturday to a mediocre at best Oklahoma team. And so, and Eli Drinkwitz can tell us everything that he wants to. He's a good salesman. I don't mean that as a pejorative. He sells. That's awesome. What he does best. But he's still trying to sell the idea. Drew Pine's he's the best quarterback I've ever had in Missouri. Drew Pine's excellent. No, he's not. Maybe he will be. He hasn't done one thing where you look at him and say, okay, now I see it. Okay. Yeah. Okay. No. And so going into this game tomorrow, and I know I'm jumping all over the place, and I'll shut up after this. Going into this game tomorrow, there's some credibility on the line for the head coach, because he still has not recruited his own quarterback, who is a leader of the program type, like a game-changing quarterback. Brady Cook was recruited by Odom. And I know he's got a recruit on the way and all that, but we've heard that story before too. Mm-hmm. Remember the Tyler Macon kid, what he got 2 snaps, bye-bye. Anyway, and Drinkwitz has not necessarily had a decent backup either. So they're going in this game tomorrow, a team they should beat, Oklahoma, with most likely Drew Pine. And the coach is basically giving the fans grief because they don't think the quarterback's any good. And okay, whatever you say, coach, but you know what? Your credibility's on the line. No, it is.
Yeah, you're right.
Your credibility, there's some of your credibility is definitely on the line tomorrow, because, to use the hockey phrase, if Drew Pine messes the bed, to me, that's more a reflection on the coach than the actual player.
All right, that's a great way to stop it. We're going to wrap up the Gashouse Gang for today. So again, reminder, you'll be able to watch this wherever you're watching it now, anytime you want, YouTube, Facebook, and of course on Twitter. It's Twitter. I'm not calling it X. But you'll also be able to podcast it at KMOX.com and all the podcast places as well. And then reminder, Monday at noon, the Cardinals, what are we calling it again? Oh, just Cardinals. God, I forgot what we called it. Oh, Cardinals Mondays.
Cardinals Mondays.
I'm such an idiot. I can't even remember the most basic name, the day and the team. Cardinals Mondays. So Bernie and I will be back on Monday with Matt and Tom. So that's coming up Monday. You guys have a great weekend. Thanks for joining us on the Gashouse Gang.